Okay. Howdy, hi, and hello. Story time. Let me take you on a journey. Not a particularly interesting journey, but a journey nonetheless. And it begins with boredom. Yeah, that's how I'm starting the journey and the video. I was bored. I was very bored. I was in like an arts and crafts creativity rut. I was just sick of all the stuff that I usually do, sick of all the things I usually paint and draw, and I realized, you know what I have sitting around in my house? Oil pastels that are basically unused. So I thought, what if I tried to use those? I'm sure the internet will tell me how to do it. And that's basically the premise of this video. Let's go. I've got myself a little flat canvas. It's Montmartre, if anyone's desperately interested. And of course, I've got the star of the show.
Woohoo! Yay!
My old oil pastels that they insisted we had to have in my final year of primary school, and we only ended up using them in class a couple of times. I started drawing this mess of random fruit and vegetables and quickly decided they were too small to colour with big chunky oil pastels, and switched that idea out for this flower person character of mine who tends to turn up whenever I'm stuck or just generally in a rut. I went ahead and slapped some gesso on that off camera, and now it's time for the big moment. As mentioned before, we did in fact have these added to our book list in primary school because these were going to be absolutely necessary for our art lessons and sessions, but I don't think any of my teachers knew how to use them. We were just slathering oil into our sketchbooks with no rhyme or reason whenever we used them, which was not often. Massive waste of time, I thought. But this project made me realise that I think I kind of like using oil pastels. They smell a tiny bit terrible. It's very easy to cross-contaminate colours, and I'm sure that despite my brief research, which included reading a couple of articles and watching a couple of YouTube videos, I'm almost certainly not doing this right. But I like them. I like them anyway. Just because I can't use them doesn't mean I don't like them. You'll notice here that a couple of times a paintbrush jumps in and out. My research told me that you could use brushes to help with blending, but all it really did was stain my brushes for a short while. At this point, I was going over some of the colours, cross-contaminating and trying to cover it up again. I wanted nice, solid, vibrant colours with lots of shading, or an attempt at shading anyway. I had forgotten a couple of my strange character's key features throughout this process because I was a little distracted. But my research had told me you could technically use acrylic paints and oil pastels together, so I just did those final details in acrylic. My acrylics also came in handy for the background. I just picked a colour I had already mixed that wouldn't clash too horrendously with the colour scheme, and spent another small eternity delicately blending it and making sure not to ruin the drawing that I had done. Yeah, that was probably the most stressful part of this entire process. Here's the final thing. It's not the best, it's not the brightest, but it cured my creativity-related depression. And in that moment, I knew I would have to bring back the vegetation. I was going to need a larger surface in order to do that. So I raided my I raided my stash of sketchbooks, picking out one that I've already been working through for a few years, so it's adequately beaten and battered and emotionally abused. Because I was going to use softer paper instead of canvas, I needed a softer pencil. Canvas is not ideal for sketching, which is why most sane individuals don't do it, I understand. So I usually use a very tough graphite that won't snap or generally protest on that surface. Unfortunately, because I never have enough room for all my crap, I had to sift through a lot of pencils to find one that worked. And will someone please explain to me why I apparently used at one point a 4H pencil? Never mind, then I found a 5H pencil. This is apparently a pattern with me. Long and boring story short, I settled for an H pencil. To the sketchbook. Now, for this piece, I was applying the age-old technique, ignoring the need for references. I was just tootling along, drawing vague shapes that slightly resembled something that might be edible, and I was making some strange choices along the way. And the further I got into this sketch, the more I realised I was going to need to look up a few things. In fact, that weird squished ovule in the middle of the page, that's what convinced me to stop being lazy and start typing a small number of characters into a search engine, because that, my friends, was supposed to be a dragon fruit. Adding some final touches in and then erasing the whole thing. Progress! Getting into the colouring, painting, pasteling, and three or so hours I sunk into this thing can probably attest to the fact that I was enjoying the process. The limited colour palette would normally have driven me a touch insane, but I don't know, it was working for me in this moment. One thing I had to be very methodical about, though, was my fingers. I was blending with my fingers because, hey, they're right there. But I couldn't let this method lead to cross-contamination. So I assigned each general colour to a specific finger or thumb. It was automatic by the time I finished, though early on I had to keep checking which fingertip I needed to use. I also used the pastels themselves for blending purposes. I was forever scraping off tiny amounts of contamination from the pastels. My questionable vegetable choices throughout this process included a blurry piece of broccoli, a contorted capsicum, and a nasturtium leaf. I just needed to fill in space, really. Also, the freaking potato is a travesty. Avert your eyes. Just pretend it's not there, please, for all our sakes. I put down some blue on the onions since I don't have a purple pastel. I was afraid that the red and the blue wouldn't mix nicely, but I was pleasantly surprised by my purple red onion. I got my very thin white acrylic just to exaggerate some of the highlights a bit further and so that I could add some seeds to the strawberry and watermelon. Here's the final thing. I don't often paint or draw or pastel things like this, and I do have some mixed feelings about it. The potato is obviously still terrible. That's a real lemon of a potato. The broccoli should be dead to me, but I like it in a strange sort of way. I like the avocado. The capsicum got a bit alien. Not sure about that one. I had low expectations of the pumpkin and radish. It was a low bar to clear, and I think they cleared it. They're okay. Not sure about the style I went with for the strawberry. Bit atypical for me, then again, so was this entire process. And finally, I was pleasantly surprised by the onion, but I expected a real failure. I expected another potato incident. I read that hairspray can be used to set oil pastels unless you listen to the people who are like, no, you must buy only the most expensive fine art supplies for your creations. But no. I use hairspray on pencil and chalk pastels all the time, so I tried a couple of coats, but it just wasn't quite working. I just decided to coat the entire thing in varnish. Oh, sorry, my apologies. All-in-one GSF glue sealer finish, sorry. That worked as varnish often does. It varnished it. Thanks for sticking with me during this journey of self-discovery. Get the hell out of my house.